Well, today I want to continue on my series on marriage matters. And my subject today is going to be 10 essentials of effective communication. I know that some of these will overlap a little bit as we go through them, but especially in the areas of communication. But communication is so very important and vital in our marriages that we can never clarify or go over or to rehearse too much. It's something which we really all need to um, give ourselves to learn more, how to be better listeners, how to communicate more effectively. And so that's really what I want to talk to you about today. It's going to be the 10 essentials of effective communication. As I said, effective communication is the single most important ingredient in a healthy marriage. In spite of how effective we can communicate with others, the following principles are essential for meaningful communication with our spouse. Sometimes we've talked to people who they have no problem at all talking with people outside of their immediate family, coworkers, neighbors, whatever, but they have a difficult time really communicating with their spouse, especially. And communication is more than just talking. The communication means that there's an actual connection that takes place. It's not that we're just bypassing each other, but we're actually connecting. There's actually something being accomplished in that communication. And so it's a connection. Communication is really a connection with other people. And that's what I'm going to talk about today is that effective communication, because the majority of arguments we found in marriages do not start because of what is said, but they start over something, over how something is said, I should say. And so it's important that the way we speak to our spouse is very important. That we use terms that are gentle, or tones rather, that are gentle and are affirming and are not something which is just kind of spouting off because of anger or something like that. So these are some of the areas. So I'm going to be for number one. I'm going to look at these 10 essentials, and the first one, number one, is to be sure our spouse is listening. If we need to speak to our spouse about an important or sensitive subject, we need to make sure that he or she is not angry or is preoccupied. One of the things that my wife always likes to say when we're counseling couple is that you need to be present, be in the present. Don't be thinking about something else elsewhere. Don't be thinking over here. Don't be angry about something yesterday or whatever. But when you're going to communicate, make sure that your spouse that you want to communicate with is listening. Very, very important. And on other broadcasts, I've talked about the art of listening, that which is something that's really been missing so much in today's society, because everybody's too concerned with just wanting to be on their phones or whatever. It's amazing when we go walking, how many people are walking out there in the open, going through the park, heads down, their phones in their hand, and that's all they look for. I don't know how they sometimes keep from stumbling into other people, but you know, your phones and your electric gadgets, they need to be something that serves you, not that you serve them. I've often said I don't serve my phone serves me. And so it's very important that our spouse is listening when we want to communicate to them. And that is the first essential ingredient. You can't communicate with someone whose mind is elsewhere. You can't communicate with someone who's kind of looking off to this direction, that direction, looking over here, closing their eyes. No, no. There has to be eye contact, and be sure that your spouse is actually listening. That's number one. Number two is to begin with something positive. If you've got something that you really need to discuss, that's a serious matter or a serious discussion, it's always advisable to begin with something positive. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that you can compliment your spouse on something which you really appreciate that he or she has done, or you appreciate a quality that they have, and something that they just it makes you really admire them, and that positive confirmation, that positive communication needs to be genuine and respectful. It needs to be something that your spouse knows that what they're hearing is really genuine. It's not just something that's off the top of the head, something that's just to kind of because you want to go somewhere. No, no, it needs to be something that is positive, but something in which we genuinely appreciate about them, And as we do that, it opens us up and opens our heart and our spirit up to really hear to what is really desired to be passed on and properly communicated. So that's number two. Begin with something positive. Number three is do not go on the attack. Oh, so many. This is such an important one. We found this over the years of counseling, and we just found it that attacks always come as in a self-righteous or defensive tone, which almost always provokes a degree of defensiveness. Attacks tend to begin with you statements, such as you are, you never, you always. The best way to avoid attacking our spouse is to try to frame our comments using I statements to express our feelings. What do I mean by that? It means that when we're wanting to really discuss something that is, say, something our spouse has got a quirk or something that they did wrong and we just don't really appreciate. We can go on and talk. So, why do you always do that? You never do this. Why do you always do whatever? You never do that. A whole lot better way of really approaching that is saying, when you do that, it makes me feel this way. When you don't do that, I feel like, I'm not really, or my wishes aren't really that important to you. And I would like to just be able to feel more in connection with you. In other words, what we do is we don't start with you statements. We don't start with you always, you do whatever. We don't project outward immediately. What we do is we reflect inwardly. And when we reflect inwardly, we're actually inviting our spouse's communication to us. When we reflect outwardly, what we're doing is we're causing them to back up and become defensive. And so it's really, really important that we learn to do that. Our spouse, whether it's our wife or a husband, is not feeling that they're on being attacked when we want to talk about something. Tone is very, very important. Again, we're just a change of tone, and you always do whatever is saying, well, this is how I feel when you do that, and I don't really appreciate it. And let's see if we can't resolve this in some way. Totally changes the tone. Totally change it from being you're wrong, I'm right, to saying let's bring it together. Let's communicate in this way. So this is again very important. You're encouraging dialogue. You're not setting yourself up as a judge of being always right, but what you're setting yourself up to is that I want dialogue, I want communication, I want us to resolve this in a way that's going to be a win-win for both of us. And that should be the goal for each one of us as we communicate with our spouses, is that we try to make it a win-win situation every time we can. So the fourth point that I wanted to make here is do not exaggerate. It's so easy to exaggerate. Like I've told you a million times. No, you probably haven't told a million times. Might have said a dozen times. But we tend to exaggerate. Exaggerating is one way in which we vent our feelings when we're upset. However, that may relieve our inner tension, but it does not do much to promote marital harmony. Once our spouse hears any slight exaggeration on our part, he or she will feel fully justified in rejecting everything we have to say. Therefore, listen to this. Words such as always and never should be eliminated when addressing each other. And I know this is a challenge. And it's a word that's used so many times when spouses begin to get into conflict with you always or you never. You never do this right. You never give me the credit for anything. You never allow me to do this or that, or you always are wrong. You say that you always say I'm the one that's wrong. You always have to be right. You always have to be the one who has the last word. You're always the one make the decision. No. Break that down. Remove those out of your vocabulary. That is probably one of the greatest challenges that we have faced with couples that we have dealt with over the years. Is because whenever you start using the term when you always or never, you're immediately setting the other person up for a defense. Because they know in their mind that's an exaggeration. They know in their mind that they don't always do that. They know that they never do that. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But when you use the terms always and never, you're setting that other person up for being defensive. And when you have the other person in a defensive mode, you're not going to get anywhere to resolve a conflict or to resolve an issue. I'll talk about resolving conflicts and turning those into growth opportunities in another broadcast. But in this today, I wanted to talk about effective communication. So one of the ways that you're going to learn to communicate effectively is don't exaggerate. Don't exaggerate. Be frank, be honest, be truthful, and share what really is going on without trying to embellish it with always or never, or trying to make yourself as in your perspective seem that's the only one that's correct and that's the only one that's right. So that's a no-no if you really want to have communication. Now, right along with that is number 5. Do not attempt to be a mind reader. You know, as I record this, my wife and I have been married over 58 years, and we can often finish each other's sentences because we know how each other thinks. But at the same time, sometimes I say we're talking about something, or we have just communicated about something, and out of the blue she comes up with, well, what do you think about so and so? What? My mind is still back on what we had just talked about, or it's going on to something else, and I say, man, I can't be your mind reader. What are you talking about? And so it's important that we don't try to convey to our spouse that we're mind readers, because we're not. So we are not amateur psychologists to figure out, and we don't have to try to figure out what somebody else is thinking. We need to have that communicated to us. I mean, come on. We can assume, if we assume that our estimates of our spouse's motives are completely accurate, then we run the risk of completely misunderstanding them. You know, even after, as I said, these many years of being married, I think I know my wife's motives most of the time, but sometimes she comes up with something that I had never thought about. And it's important for me to hear her out. It's important for me to really hear what she has to say. I can recall in our early years of marriage, I didn't give that a whole lot of consideration. I didn't take into consideration a lot of what she said, or things that she advised me for, or things that she had input for. And I had to learn over the years that is really a no-no on my part, because she's an intelligent person, and because she's intelligent, and because she has the commonality of purpose in mind for our family, for us as a couple, I had gotten to learn that I've had to learn, I should say, that I really value her input. She's a spiritual woman, and I value her spiritual input as well. And so for you as your spouse, if you're both believers, especially if you're both believers, you need to give each other the benefit of the doubt, and you need to really hear each other out and allow input from the other one in order for you to really come to a conclusion, or really understand and get an idea really of what God is actually wanting for you. Or perhaps you have a situation where you just really need to have some kind of clarity. And you're not going to get that clarity if one of you is always got to be right. So hear the other one out without trying to be a mind reader and think, all right, I already know your motive. I already know where you're going with this. No. Hear it out. Number 6 is what I want to talk about. Number 6 is to focus on the relationship, not just on principles. Because I've taught the word for over 50 years, I teach principles. I understand the principles of Scripture. And so, you know, if somebody tries to come along with some kind of a doctrine that's off track, I know that's off track immediately, because that's not a principle that follows throughout the Scripture. All the Scripture and true doctrine needs to be established throughout various places in Scripture. But in getting into our relationship here, we can say, well, we can just stick on principle, but that's not good enough either. Sometimes we pretend that our feelings are not important as the principles that we feel differently about. I got to slow down. My tongue's getting over my eye tooth. Can't see what I'm saying. Let me say that again. Number 6, focus on relationship, not on principles. Sometimes we pretend that our feelings are not as important as the principle we feel different about. Because of this, we try to convince each other through argument that our position is right. That's never going to get you anywhere. We've talked with couples, and one of the couples always feels like they've got to have the last word. And so I've sometimes I, well, how's that working for you? And of course, we know how it's working for them. It's not. Excuse me. If it were working for them, they wouldn't be coming to see us. But anyway, while we might believe we are strengthening our position by arguing, we're actually weakening it. You do realize that? It would be more productive to speak about our feelings than argue about principle. Philosophy is more easily refuted than feelings. You come to me with what your philosophy is, what your opinion is about something. I may agree, I might not agree. But if you come to me and really show how you feel about something, I'm not talking about being judgmental or being argumentative. I'm saying, well, I just feel this is wrong, or I feel this is right, or I feel this is what we need to do. Instead of just saying, we need to do this, or you can't do that, or no, that's never going to work. No, express your feelings. Let's talk about a relationship. Again, I've often said this, and I'll keep saying it again. The issue is not the issue. The issue is the relationship. And so focus on the relationship, not just on principles. Principles are great. Principles are absolutely essential for life. But when you're in a discussion with your spouse, principles aren't always what you want to focus on. You want to focus on what is making my spouse feel the way he or she does. How can we resolve the conflict or the question that we have in a way that is going to be, as I said, a win-win for both of us, because that's really what we're after. We're after win-win. We're after harmony. We're after peace. We're after pleasure. All relationships, and I'll say this again, I'll say this throughout this series more than once, all relationships are based in pain or pleasure. And all too many times, marriages are painful rather than pleasurable. And when we talk about being pleasurable, we're not just talking about sexual. We're talking about emotionally pleasurable, where we know we can be ourselves and be honest with each other without being condemned or being put down. It goes back to the same thing of we've asked couples time and time again. The most recent couple that we had come to us, we asked each of them, do you feel safe with your spouse? And the sad part about it was, neither one of them could speak in the affirmative. They both said, no, we don't feel safe. And what I mean by safe is I don't mean they're going to get beat up when they get home. But no, I mean that they can't really express themselves and share their emotions without being put down or not be heard or whatever. So it's very, very important that we focus on relationship, not just on principles. Number 7, explain what makes us feel the way we do. You say, well, you're talking so much about feelings. That's just pure psychology. No. We as humans are emotional beings. And because we're emotional beings, we have feelings. And because we have feelings, those feelings need to be honored and they need to be respected. Even God has feelings. He gets angry. In Scripture says he laughs. He has compassion. Jesus demonstrated the nature of God when he was here. He had compassion. He had anger. He was a challenge to the who's who in his day. He had feelings. And so nothing wrong with that. So explain what makes us feel the way we do. Different things hurt different people. Words, actions, innuendos. Sometimes things that I don't even think twice about could cause some real emotional pain for my wife. And so we need to learn what those things are. And we need to learn to eliminate those as much as possible. It's a mistake to assume that is not necessarily to explain why we feel the way we do. It's a mistake. Don't be afraid to share your feelings, men especially. Sometimes we men we feel like it's not macho or not manly enough to express our feelings. But you know what? Our wives will have a greater respect for us and greater appreciation for us if we allow them to get in and touch our feelings, because we have them. Come on, we have them just as well as our wives do. We just think sometimes that it's not macho enough, and it's just not manly. Well, come on. If we do not explain exactly how we feel in the most specific language possible, our spouse will not understand what bothers us. We give them the silent treatment. We feel like, it's not important for me to say what I really feel about this, because you don't really appreciate my input anyway. But, if we don't explain and clarify how we feel about something, like making a decision about something, making a major decision, or even if it's not just a major decision, but something that involves the both of you, involves your family. And what your spouse is saying, what do you think about this? Should we do this or not? What's your feeling? Oh, well, I just don't have a lot to say. But inwardly, you have a lot you'd like to say. But whatever the reason is, you kind of hold back on it and you're not really expressing what you feel. Now, your spouse then makes a decision. And then you criticize the decision. But she or he made that decision based upon what they understood and what they understood as your position to be. if we don't really express that position, if we don't pass that position on to them so they can really connect with us in that communication level, then how are they to know how we feel? How are they to know then how they're to respond to a given circumstance if we don't tell them exactly where we are in that whole process? So it's really important that we need to be as specific about how we feel about something as we possibly can, so that our spouse will understand really what our position is, what bothers us, what makes us happy, and whatever. So the number 8 of this is to clarify our needs. We will not be able to get what we need from our spouse unless we are able to articulate exactly what our needs are. We must tell our spouse not only what bothers us, but also what we would have wanted done differently. Again, I realize that in order to do this, you have to have a certain degree of safety and feeling that you can express yourself without kind of reprisal or being put down or being told off or whatever. But this is all part of this learning. We're going to cover some of those things when conflicts in another broadcast. I will talk about conflicts and how to disarm them and how to cause or make conflicts become growth opportunities. But today I'm talking about this. We need we won't be able to get what we need from a spouse unless we're able to speak to them and tell them exactly how we feel, what we is that wanted, or what we would want to have done differently. Do not assume that your spouse or our spouse knows what we need just because we're married. Again, like I said earlier, we're not mind readers. She's not a mind reader. He's not a mind reader. That's why communication is necessary. This is why we say communication there. And I'll go back over there, sir. There's 3 important ingredients, essential ingredients in a marriage: communication, communication, communication. And this is so very important. As I talked about in a previous broadcast, communication in the kitchen, communication in the living room, communication in the bedroom. And those areas all need attention. They need to be in the place where we can communicate what our desires are, what our needs are, what our expectations are, how we feel differently about something. We need to communicate that. Though it is very gratifying to have our needs met without asking, it is unrealistic to expect that level of perception all the time. It's always a joy to have your spouse do something or bring home something or whatever for you, just an expression of appreciation, gratitude, or whatever it might be, without specifically asking for it. I know sometimes when Marty goes out and she does shopping, she'll come home and she'll bring me a favorite coffee or something like that. And I say, oh, that's great. So thank you, sweetheart. I didn't even ask for that. And I'll do the same at times. I'll come home with a bit of a surprise, and just because I know that she will appreciate it. And so this is why we need to not assume that our spouse what we need just because we're married. Oh yeah, there's surprises are good, but it's even better to have that communication level to the place where you can really connect and understand each other and appreciate each other and the abilities that we have. Now, this is something that is our number 9 here, something that is really important when we're getting into communication, especially when it's a borderline argument. And this is number 9. And what it is in number 9 here is to limit the discussion to 1 or 2 concerns. Husbands and wives sometimes find that they have accumulated a long list of complaints and grievances. And when each one finally gets to his or her turn to speak, he or she then tries to address too many subjects all at once. Trying to address too many topics at one time is extremely counterproductive for several reasons. I want to tell you what those reasons are, then I'll give you a couple examples. Number 1, the listener begins to lose patience by the 3rd or 4th item in the list of complaints. Number 2, the speaker has guaranteed that no one topic can be explored in depth. Consequently, no resolution can be implemented. And this is exactly what happens. You see, if we don't communicate openly and keep our communication current, if we just continue stuffing things and just not really dealing with and bring to resolution things that we have differences about or different opinions about or different focus on, if we just let those things fester and finally comes to the point we're going to talk about it, it can be either a volcanic explosion, or else we start like a machine gun, bang, 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 bang. All these things are wrong. All these things you've done are wrong. All these things you haven't done are wrong. No, you're never going to get anywhere with that. In one of our marriage matters weekends, we were discussing at this particular point, and one of the gentlemen spoke up and said, "Oh man, that hits me right between the eyes." He said, "Because whenever it's my turn to speak, and I have the talking stick, whenever it's my turn to speak, I've got a whole list of things that I want to talk about." But you see, we can't do it that way because here's the reason. I'll use myself as an example. I have a very quick mind. I go one, two, three to something else. My wife she's a contemplator. She thinks about it. She contemplates before she responds. She needs to take time to process. And if I don't give her that opportunity to process on a single statement or something that we're trying to discuss and come to a resolution, if I just keep hammering away, okay, I got number one, number two, number three, number four. If I have all of that, her mind goes tilt and she can't do anything. She just can't hear anything after number one or two. She just can't hear it. And so nothing gets resolved. We shove it under the rug starts piling up, we stumble over the lump under the rug, and the first thing you know, we're in a major conflict with each other. Doesn't have to be that way. Does not have to be that way. When you're going to discuss things, discuss one thing at a time. Bring that to resolution. Bring that to a conclusion. Oh, but you said that's pretty well impossible. I've got so many things bottled up that I want to talk about. Well, how's that working for you? Because again, we're human beings and we can do multitasking perhaps. But when it comes to really communication, you can't be trying to resolve a dozen different things at one time. You do it one step at a time. I've often said that's the reason for, and generally speaking, God does not give us children in litters. Because really, if we can only build essential relationships one at a time. And so that's another one of the reasons why it's so important that we limit our discussions to just one or two maxima at one time, and we discuss those and we come to some form of conclusion or resolution before we go on to something else. Seems like a simple request, but it's not always a simple thing to do because we want to get it done now because we've let it build up over 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever. Don't do that. Stay current. Keep it open. Communicate. So you don't have a long list that you got to deal with. You can deal with one at a time. Number 10, allow time for questions after presenting your concerns. This is so vitally important as well. We can rattle off a bunch of things that we're concerned about in our relationship. And we can expect our spouse to be thinking in the same rapid fire terms that we're perhaps laying them out. But that's just not going to happen. So stop speaking before our spouse loses patience and allow him or her to ask the questions. Share what your concerns are. Share what you want to communicate about. Share where you're going with this. And then say, well, how do you feel about this? What do you think? What's your input? We need to have the input from both of us because we're a team here. And because we are a team, we need to have each other's input because as the scripture even says, the strategy is established about the 2 or 3 witnesses. That's Eli's paraphrase. But we need to stop speaking. We need to allow our spouse to communicate. We need to allow our spouse to respond. Allowing for questions assumes that our concerns have fully. Sorry, let me read that again. Allowing for questions assumes that our concerns have been fully understood. Questions give us the opportunity to clarify what we have said. You see, if I'm trying to communicate something to you, and if I don't give you the opportunity to ask me a question for clarification, then my assumption is going to be that you understood what I had to say. But you might not have understood at all. But if I don't give you that opportunity to say, okay, respond back. Did you hear what I was saying? Did you understand what we were saying? Are we on the same page? If I don't give you that option, I can go away from this conversation thinking that you understand perfectly and completely what my intentions are, what it is that I really wanted to say. But you may not have understood at all. Same way, vice versa. If you don't give me the opportunity to say, well, what did you mean? Can you clarify that point? Can you clarify that for me so that I can more readily understand what you're saying? Now, when you do that, when you give me that opportunity, or we do that, now we can come to an agreement. We come to an essential understanding of the principle or the point that's attempting to be made. When we come to that place, now we can truly have a joining of minds, of thought, of directives, of conclusion and resolution, so that now then we can go forward building whatever it is that we need to build with. We have concluded that section. We have concluded that question. We have concluded that statement. And so these are the essentials that are essential. I'm going to go back through them really quickly. Just give the points of it, and in case you're taking notes or whatever. Number one, be sure your spouse is listening when you're ready to have some really meaningful communication. Number two, begin that communication with something positive. Number three, do not go on the attack. That's not going to resolve anything. All it's going to do is cause walls to go up and people to become more defensive. Don't go on the attack. Do not exaggerate. Don't use terms like always or never. Figure out some way to present something or communicate something that it's not an exaggeration of that, because nothing is ever done always, or nothing is never done. So learn how you can eliminate those out of your communication as much as possible. Number five, do not attempt to be a mind reader. None of us are mind readers. Come on. We need to have communication in order for us to really understand each other. And number six, focus on the relationship, not just on principles. Very important. Remember, the issue is not the issue. The issue is the relationship. Number seven, explain what makes us feel the way we do. If you don't explain to your spouse how you feel, how are they supposed to know it without trying to be a mind reader? God did not create us to be mind readers. God created us to be communicators. Number eight, clarify our needs. Be sure that your spouse really understands what your needs are, what it is that you're trying to say, what it is that you want to obtain or receive out of this communication. Limit the discussion to one or two concerns. Don't try to overwhelm your spouse with just a myriad of questions or about just all kinds of things that are unresolved, and you try to pick through all of them and end up with resolving no more, and then you get another one added to the pile. And number 10, when you are in a communication mode, what you want to do is you want to allow time for questions after presenting your concern or your position, because that's the only way you're going to really know whether or not your spouse has understood what you're trying to convey. You know yourself that when somebody is speaking to you and you don't quite understand what they're saying, and if they just keep rattling on and going on and on and on, you have to put up your hands and say, "Whoa, hold it! I don't understand what you're saying here. Could you explain that more fully?" Because they may know exactly what you're doing, what they're doing or what they're saying, but you don't have a clue. That's why you need to give the other person the opportunity to ask questions, so that communication can be clarified, so it can both be on the same page. So there you have it. 10 essential ingredients here for our. Let me see here. How to have 10 essentials of effective communication that I have here. We'll continue this series We'll continue this series with more broadcasts. I hope you're enjoying them. I hope it's going to be helpful to you for not only in your marriage and as with your spouse, but hopefully that's also going to be helpful in other communications in the business world, or just in friendships and social circles or whatever. We're all still learning. None of us have completely and totally arrived, but we're all on the journey together. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.